Hi, my name is Scott Green, and I'm the managing partner of the Green Law Group in Simi Valley, California. The Green Law Group was built basically for construction law and to serve the construction community, primarily subcontractors. I am the founder of the Green Law Group, and I've been practicing law in Southern California since 1978. Before I practiced law, I worked as a contractor, an unlicensed contractor. That's how I got through law school. I went to law school at night, worked as a house painter during the day, showed up at class sometimes wearing my painter's whites, and used to solicit some of my classmates for business. I was fortunate enough to meet a bunch of people in school who were going nights also that had very nice houses in La Jolla, California. And so during my 4-year career in law school, I did a lot of painting and some remodeling work in the city of in La Jolla, and a very nice area. But I did all that as an unlicensed contractor, and I was fortunate that never caught up to me. So I got out of law school, and I really thought for a while about whether or not I wanted to go legit as a contractor or practice law. Decided I would come up to Los Angeles where my father had a construction business and I knew I had family and friends, and foolishly probably decided to just hang out a shingle and start practicing law. Well, that was kind of a mess. I got all kinds of different things coming at me from friends and family. And one day I'd be doing a divorce, and then I'd be doing a DUI, and then I'd be doing a will. And it was just too much. So eventually decided I needed to specialize in something, and landed on construction because in that area I thought I had a bit of a competitive advantage because of my background in construction. And then I picked up a major client, my father. My father was a contractor and a house painter primarily, and did TI work, but he wasn't licensed. He was paying all of his people out of his pocket, cash business, no insurance, not really following any of the rules. And one of my dad's probably best clients, who knew me, said, Scott, you got to get your dad legit because I can't keep doing it this way. So I did. So I got my dad licensed, incorporated his business, got everybody on payroll, and for 10 years pretty much worked as in-house counsel and project manager and estimator, and again learned much more about the construction business as I helped my father grow his business from about $250,000 till after 10 years we were doing $4 or $5 million a year, primarily in tenant improvement work in painting. And so along the way, I also, figured out the basics of how to collect money. And I absolutely learned the importance of cash flow because payroll comes around every week or two without fail. And so if your clients are not paying you, it can be a real challenge. I remember lots of Fridays when we'd be rushing around to collect checks from clients and make it to the bank on time so that the payroll checks would be good. And then occasionally we'd run into a client who, didn't want to pay. And so I had to figure out, well, what do you do when, when you've done the work and you don't get paid? So that kind of started my journey to the the area of law that I would eventually end up practicing in primarily, which is helping contractors get paid. So this particular webinar, we're calling it How to Secure and Collect the Money You Earn. Because after all, if you're not going to get paid, you might as well go to the beach. So getting paid is something that you need to keep in mind right at the outset. Basically everything you do in this business. And one of the unfortunate truths about the construction business is, although it's a great business and I love construction, love the industry, love to build things, make things better, but the paperwork side of the business is at least as important, sometimes more important than the actual construction. So you might come into this business as a mechanic, if you will, and a tradesperson, and be the absolute best in your trade. But if you can't get your arms around the paperwork side of the business, you're going to be in trouble. And so, as a construction law attorney, when clients get in touch with me and they have a collection issue, one of the first things I do is I say, well, you got to send me your contract, and I'm going to also go online and check your license. And I'm going to ask you about the communications back and forth between you and your customer, so I can get a sense of what the dispute is all about, and start to make an assessment of what your odds are going to be as far as being able to prevail if the matter should go on to court or go into arbitration or perhaps mediation. Because in all of those forums, whether it's trial, arbitration, or mediation, again, it's all about paperwork. Because none of those folks are going to have been personally involved in the project. And so they're going to learn about the project, learn about you and your position by reviewing the documents that have been developed at the outset and during the course of the project, and then the things that the lawyers do after. So this webinar, and I should mention that it's actually a redo of a live webinar that we did a week or so ago. And during that live webinar, we had audio problems with the system. So we've decided to not try to do these live anymore. We're just going to tape them and then announce or advertise the fact that the webinar has been taped, so you can download it and view it at your leisure, at your convenience. Or we'll have them on YouTube, so you can have easy access to them, and of course they'll be free. So my expectation is that we're going to do a new webinar on this general topic every Tuesday. At least have it available to you every Tuesday through the end of the year. And so if you want to stay with us and go on this journey with us, at the end of the year, I assure you that you're going to be much more likely to avoid stepping in unnecessary legal problems. So we're going to help you avoid legal pitfalls. So we're going to start kind of at the beginning of the construction business. And talk about licensing. And what we're going to use as a written guide as we go through this is a document that's actually a PowerPoint that I have pieced together over many years. It's one of these things where I add to it when new cases come out or we learn something new. And so what started out at one point of just a few pages is now, I don't know, maybe 200 plus pages. Plus, there are articles in a appendix at the end of the PowerPoint, which probably add another I don't know, 100 or so pages. So there's a lot of information, but the nice thing is this, it's in a PDF format and it's searchable. So you can search the document for things like preliminary notices, and you'll find all kinds of references and information about preliminary notices, or licensing, or mechanics law, or mechanics liens, or workers' comp. Any keyword search, should produce, some interesting, relevant information. But today we're going to start kind of chronologically, and we're going to talk about licensing and a little bit more about the firm before we get going, and then the folks who have sponsored this. So I'm trying to now move my PowerPoint and it's not cooperating. So I'm going to ask Mackenzie to help me to see if we can get the PowerPoint moving to the next page. It works beautifully before we start recording, but once we start recording, not so well. All right. Okay, so the next page. This is kind of my CYA notice a little bit, but also letting how powerful it is to kind of invest in yourself and learn as much as you can about how the law impacts what you do for a living. And then the little bit of marketing here is let you know that the Green Law Group, our practice areas are construction, business, employment, a little bankruptcy, a little real estate law, also a little insurance. The way the practice has developed is our clients, form corporations, LLCs, so we do that. We help them maintain those business entities. Sometimes we help them sell those or buy new ones. And then our clients have employees. So we've gotten pretty good on employment law, which is critically important. And sometimes they have to take refuge in the bankruptcy laws. So we have a pretty good understanding of that. Or sometimes somebody who owes you money has gone bankrupt. So it's necessary that we understand that. And because we do a lot of mechanics liens, which are recorded encumbrances against real property, we're pretty good on real estate law. So that's our lineup for what we do. Now this next slide here is just basically telling you that you're going to get general information from me, but for your specific questions about the law, shoot me an email or talk to another California construction attorney, because the law changes constantly. So you don't want to take what you hear in this as gospel. You might be listening to it a year or more after it was initially recorded. So, and the specific facts in each matter make a difference. So always make sure you get advice based upon the specific facts of your particular matter. Okay, table of contents. And what we're going to run through today is pages 18 to 46 in the PowerPoint, which is all about licensing, a little bit on new laws. Here's another promo on the Green Law Group, just telling you a little bit more about us. Oh, there's my good-looking picture. See that? I've got more hair there, and it's a little darker, so it's a little old, but I am never changing that because I'm not getting any younger. There's my partner, Stephen Sanders, who, by the way, in addition to being an outstanding attorney, is also a licensed general contractor and a licensed real estate broker. So he understands the construction business inside and out, and just a great guy to work with when you've got a dispute in construction. And there goes the train. Our office is right sitting alongside a railroad track. So every once in a while you may hear a train go by. This is Jeff Coigner. He great attorney and also outstanding insurance coverage disputes. So all of our insurance submittals and disputes go to Jeff. Mike Calipor, fantastic lawyer, also has an advanced degree in tax law. So Mike, I didn't mention, we also do estate planning because our clients also have estates. So Mike does estate planning, a lot of business work, and general litigation. Matt Backdale is our lead employment attorney. Uh, Really good guy. I mean, we don't hire people that aren't really good. Nate Cade is our newest associate. Nate worked with me as a law clerk for a couple of years, and now he's a member of the bar and really good guy. Okay, so had a few new laws in 2019. I'm going to let you take a look at this at your leisure. Nothing super big in terms of like changes. And 2018 is there. We're going to scroll through that a little bit. Okay, licensing law. Number one rule, no license, no money. So here's probably the most important thing for you to know about contracting business. In California, if you are not what's called duly licensed at all times during the performance of your work, then you can't collect any money. So if somebody owes you and you go to court, unless you can prove that you were correctly licensed at all times, you not only cannot collect money, but you can be compelled to give all of the money back that you billed while you were not properly licensed. So that's kind of important. So it's like you're not licensed, you don't get to pass go, you don't get to collect $200 or any amount if we were playing Monopoly. Plus, it's criminal. So being licensed, is incredibly important. Now, it might seem like a relatively simple thing, and you might be asking yourself, well, gosh, who wouldn't be licensed if you're in the construction business? Isn't that kind of fundamental? Yes, it is. And I would say that about, I don't know, 5 to 10% of the folks that I talk to, people that contact me for advice, have licensing problems. So as a routine matter, when I'm talking to somebody, I will check with a contractor state license board. I'll ask for your license number. I'll check with a license board. And I'm looking at that record to see if the contractor I'm talking to, if their license is active. I'm checking to see if the scope of work they performed matches up with their license. I'm checking to see if they have workers' compensation insurance, because if you have employees, you must have workers' compensation insurance. And we'll get into that a little bit, because not having the workers' comp insurance can result in your license being retroactively suspended. So, and I'm looking to see if the license, and I've changed the page now, is for the correct entity. One of the most common things that happens is someone's accountant might say, hey, you should incorporate your business. And that's probably a good idea. But what the accountants don't generally understand is that for a new corporation, you have to have a license for that corporation. And if you don't get a separate license for the corporation, and you start doing work in the corporation thinking that, oh, your personal sole license is all you need, that's wrong. And you'll end up inadvertently contracting without a license and subjecting yourself to all those draconian things I mentioned. You can't collect your money, you might go to jail, and you might be compelled to give all the money back. So when you form a new entity, a corporation, or a limited liability company or partnership, you've got to make sure that that entity is properly licensed. And you can do that by qualifying the entity for a license as a responsible managing officer, which infers that you own some of the company, or responsible managing employee, which is that you're working full-time for the company, or in the case of an LLC, it's called a responsible managing member. But having a license issued to your entity, critically important. A lot of times somebody will have a sole license that they've had for a long time, and they want to keep the same license number. That is possible. You can have that license number transferred to your new entity, so that the history of your license, is still reflected in the Contractor State License Board records. Okay, when you've had somebody qualify your entity for a license, if they retire or leave, they are going to notify the CSLB that they've disassociated. When that happens, you get 90 days to get somebody else to qualify the company for a license. If you don't, after that 90-day period, then the company is no longer licensed and you run afoul of all those things we mentioned earlier. You can sometimes get that 90 days extended to 180 days under particular circumstances, as when maybe a family member who is a qualifier has passed and you need a little more time. Contact the CSLB about getting an extension. All right, so lots of companies do business in a name other than the name that they might have with the Contractors License Board. That's called a fictitious business name. So if I was Scott Green Contracting, well, that's not a fictitious business name. That's just me. My license record should say Scott Green Contracting. But if I want to be, XYZ Contracting Specialist, that doesn't tell people who I am, and so the law would require that I get a fictitious business name, and also that I notify the CSLB that I'm doing business under this fictitious business name. And the Contractor State License Board's records should reflect the exact name that I'm using in business. So sometimes somebody will contact me and say, hey, I'm doing business as, ABC Plumbing. I'll say, great, let's look up the license history for ABC Plumbing. And when we get there, the license number doesn't come up with that name, ABC Plumbing. It comes up with something different. You don't want that to happen. You want all of your paperwork, all of your marketing, all of your contracts, all of your correspondence, everything to have the exact name as reflected in your CSLB license record on all your documentation, so that you avoid the possibility that somebody is going to make an argument that you're doing business under a name which doesn't match up with the license record, and therefore you're unlicensed. You just want to avoid that whole problem. A number of years ago, the state decided that LLCs could get licenses. You really don't want to use an LLC because it costs you more money. You have to have a much bigger bond than you do have to have as an individual or a corporation. So I generally discourage people from using LLCs. Here is one of the cases that is often cited, a 2005 case, where a contractor who was only unlicensed for a short time during his performance on the job was nonetheless prevented from collecting a very substantial amount of money. So, for instance, and I think in this case what happened was the contractor had an ornamental license for ornamental metal work, but was also doing structural metal work, and he didn't have the structural, I believe. So he had one but not the other, but was in the process of getting the license he didn't have. But while he was in that process of getting a license, he started work. And then at the end of the job wasn't paid, and the defendants were able to avoid paying him entirely because they pointed out that he did not have the correct license classification at all times during performance of the work. So that's critically important to understand. So for instance, you might, and I think it was this case or a similar case, where the contractor just did a shop drawing. He hadn't done any physical work, but just did a shop drawing. And the court decided that, well, that was enough, that he needed, and here we go, here's that case, that you needed to be properly licensed, not just when you're doing physical work, but doing shop drawings. So the rule here is if you're not certain that your license matches the scope of work of the contract, get an attorney's opinion before you actually do any work at all. Okay, so here we talk about the consequences of being unlicensed, and like I said, it's draconian, including potential criminal filings. And here's disgorgement. You got to give all the money back. So licensing incredibly important. You can actually become unlicensed inadvertently if you let your license bond expire. You got to stay on top of that. And the automatic license suspension happens if you fail to have workers' compensation for all of your employees. So you've got to have the workers' compensation policy, and then you have to properly maintain that policy, which means correctly reporting all of your payroll, putting everybody on payroll, and correctly reporting that to the work comp carrier. If you fudge on that or cheat on that, and that gets discovered, that means you're going to have your license retroactively suspended potentially, and if that happens, you got to give all the money back. So do not cheat on workers' comp. State of California is very focused on that. So here's more info on the strict requirements for workers' comp. Pay attention to that. By the way, roofing subcontractors, do we have any roofing subs listening? You cannot report that you are exempt from workers' comp because you have no employees. The state won't believe it. By the way, I usually don't believe it either. If I'm looking at somebody's license record and it says they're exempt from workers' comp because they have no employees, that is rarely true. It's highly unusual for one person to be doing everything, all of the work, all the administrative stuff, all of the cleanup. I mean, it's, I've run into maybe a handful of people over my 40 plus years who wear all of the hats. But I frequently see people who are reporting that they're exempt from workers' comp, claiming they have no employees. And generally, I discover that that's because they don't understand what an employee is or who qualifies as an employee. So basically, everybody you have working for you, if they don't have their own contractor's license and they're out in the field doing construction, they're your employee. So laborers that you might pick up, they're your employees. People come in, they want to be paid under the table, they're your employees. Don't go for that. Okay, here's an important case about how the courts interpreted a situation where the contractor didn't have everybody on payroll and ultimately found that this contractor was basically cheating. I forget the exact numbers, but it was something like his actual payroll was about $250,000, and he was only reporting like 25,000. So the court found that his license was automatically and retroactively suspended because he was cheating. Here's another case that the outcome was favorable to the contractor because the courts found that it was basically not an intentional act and it was a mistake. Contractor used his friend and his son's friend to work, didn't have him covered, but the court found an exception there. So this contractor caught a break. So here, more scary news, work comp fraud can get you a 10-year prison sentence. So you don't want to mess around with that. And what I said earlier, you've got to obtain the workers' comp and maintain it. So no cutting corners. Here's a little more information about unlicensed independent contractors are your employees. A lot of folks don't understand that. So if you're going to pay somebody as an independent contractor, make sure that they are in fact licensed. Okay, so we've run through the information about licensing, and pretty much we're going to close out on time. Next week, we're going to start off with preliminary notices and run through that. If you want to get ahead of the game, take a look at pages 47 through 105. That's what we're going to cover for next Tuesday. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, you can send me an email, scott@thegreenlawgroup.com. If you forget that, it's at the beginning of the PowerPoint. When you look at my bio, you'll see my phone number and my email address. Good luck and be safe. Goodbye.